Hello, everybody, and welcome. I'm Judy Smith, one of the hosts for tonight's panel. I'd like to welcome you all on behalf of Chevy Chase United Methodist Church, our Creation Care team, and our other co-sponsors. Thanks for being here tonight. I know there are a lot of pressures on your time, so we appreciate that you're here to hear our panel members talk about the problems of plastic and the ways that we can help to solve those problems as both citizens and consumers. I hope you had a chance to see the film, The Story of Plastic, because it certainly illustrates the urgency which we all feel about our environment. Every day we read or we see or we hear new reports about the crises. There are the fires on the West Coast, and there are more hurricanes on the southern and eastern shores of our country, as well as tornadoes in the Midwest. And that's to say nothing about the rise in the oceans and the pollution of the water, the air, and the land, examples of which we saw so vividly in the film. We all feel this urgency, or else we wouldn't be here tonight. For those of us from faith communities, our commitment comes because we believe the earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof, the world and all that is in it, the things and the people. Creation is God's gift to us, but it's a gift that we have been charged to take care of, to protect, and to preserve. And we haven't done a very good job of that. Tonight, we're here to learn more and also to see how we can do a better job of being stewards, not only to preserve the beauty of God's earth, but also the health of God's people, because we all know that it is not only an environmental problem, but that it's a problem of environmental justice. That some of these problems, these issues are more serious and affect the lives of those who are in poorer countries or are in situations which are challenging. I'd like now to introduce our team, and then I'll introduce our panelists. The team that is working with us tonight, first of all, Jeremy Arling. Jeremy is going to be taking care of your questions. He is a member of our Creation Care team at Chevy Chase United Methodist Church. And Shruti Bhatnagar is going to be helping Jeremy and working on our tech. So Shruti is from the Montgomery County Sierra Club, and you want to tell us something about the tech, Shruti?
Yes, hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Shruti Bhatnagar, and I'm the chair of the Sierra Club Montgomery County group. Excited to be here with all of you today. At the end of the presentations, we will have a slide that we will show. It will have the contact information of all the panelists, and another slide just with a brief recap of the action item and the resources about which you will learn during the presentations.
And also behind the scenes, we won't get to see him, but Gary Young is doing the tech for the Sierra Club. So thank you so much, Gary. We really appreciate that. And now on to our distinguished panelists. I won't give a long introduction now because each one will be introduced before he or she speaks, but just so that you can see them and know who they are. Sarah Love is the Maryland State Delegate from Montgomery County. Adam Ortiz Montgomery County Director of Environmental Protection, Tommy Wells, the District of Columbia Director of Energy and Environment, Amy Marin, the Zero Waste Lead for the Maryland Sierra Club, and Jean Braha, Executive Director of Rock Creek Conservancy. So thank you all for being on our panel tonight. We also would like to thank all of our co-sponsors. More than 230 people have registered, and we have you co-sponsors to thank for that, for spreading the word for us. And the co-sponsors are Chevy Chase Presbyterian Church, Blessed Sacrament Catholic Church, St. Columba's Episcopal Church, and Tifereth Israel Synagogue, Bethesda United Methodist Church, Montgomery County Sierra Club, Rock Creek Conservancy, the Interfaith Partners for the Chesapeake, Moms Clean Air Force, and Interfaith Power and Light for the DMV. So again, thank you very much. I also would like to put in a great thank you to my sister in Christ, Liz Thainer, who from Emmanuel United Methodist Church, who did a similar program in Howard County and has really helped me step by step with Eventbrite, which isn't an easy thing to do. So now, at this time, I'd like to introduce our pastor from my church, Chevy Chase United Methodist Church, the Reverend Kirkland Reynolds, who will open our discussion with prayer.
Thank you, Judy. Thank you to all of our panelists, and thank you again to all the faithful folks with the Creation Care team at Chevy Chase United Methodist. I am honored to be here with you, to learn with you, to commit to action with you, and to discover what we can continue to do in this moment. Let us pray. Gracious God, creator of all good things, we thank you for our home, the earth, and all creatures that share it. Have mercy on us and forgive us for how we do not care for your many gifts. We have created systems and economies and habits that plunder your creation and which imperil the safety and livelihood of so many creatures, great and small. We have poisoned the air, polluted the water, made fertile ground infertile, and stripped forests bare. The planet and the climate are in a dangerous moment. And each day we struggle to change our wayward actions so we might live in ways that lead us all and all of creation into a better future. We are here, God, because we believe people and societies can move beyond inaction. We long for a day where fires will not consume multiple states, where storms will not be strengthened, and where ecological devastation is not caused or compounded by human choices. Please guide us in this moment, both the moment of this conversation and the greater moment for creation justice, so we may become the kind of stewards and advocates you long to see at work in your creation. May we accept that the time has come to restore all of creation, not just for generations to come, but for those of us who are living now, and especially for those among us who suffer disproportionately from the many climate injustices. May this prayer further draw us to your vision for creation, that every good thing you created may flourish and live fully into its potential. And may we, by prayer and conversation tonight, further commit ourselves to the work and the sacrifices necessary to meet this moment. Amen.
Thank you, Reverend Reynolds, Pastor Kirkland to us. Okay, I think we should go on now and to our panelists. And I'd like to introduce Delegate Sarah Love. Delegate Love was elected to the Maryland House of Delegates in November of 2018. She serves on the Environment and Transportation Committee and on 2 of its subcommittees, Transportation and Motor Vehicles and Land Use and Ethics. She also chairs the Montgomery County House Delegation Land Use, Transportation, and Public Safety Committee. Prior to her election, Sarah was the public policy director for the ACLU of Maryland, the American Civil Liberties Union, where she led their policy and legislative work for 4 years, including reproductive rights, racial justice, public funding for public schools, criminal justice reform, drug policies, technology and privacy, the First Amendment, open government and accountability, and voting rights. Before working for the ACLU, Sarah served as the general counsel and legal director of NARAL, Pro-Choice America. She graduated from Princeton University, and her law degree is from Northwestern University School of Law. Welcome, Sarah.
Thank you, Judy. Thank you, Reverend Reynolds, for that lovely prayer. Thank you all for being here, my fellow panelists. It's lovely to see you. I appreciate the opportunity to be here and talk with you all and everyone who's watching. I've seen this movie a couple of times, and every time I see it, it just puts a pit in my stomach. It really brings forward so many things that we don't think about in our daily lives. And I've started looking at plastic differently now. I go to the grocery store and I wonder, why on earth do I have to buy broccoli in a plastic box? And one thing that they said really was the answer, that this is driven by the supply, not by the demand. And I thought the movie did such a wonderful job of connecting all the dots and bringing it all together to show us from start to finish how plastics are made, all the way through, you know, the way that they're being pushed, and then onto the waste problem at the end. And what we see from the companies is this continual push to recycle, this continual push to put it on the municipalities and on the localities and on the states to take care of, because you're not doing it correctly. The individuals, you're not recycling enough. Well, what we all know now is that we can't recycle our way out of this problem. We've been trying for many, many years. When I was growing up, I remember tying newspapers into bundles, and this will date me, but you know, we'd collect our bottles and separate them by color. But yet we're still here, and it's a very concerning issue. I was really excited this past session because the chair of our committee said, you know, we need to take a deep dive into waste and recycling. And he set up a work group. And I'm on this work group, and we have gone into really looking at waste and recycling. And we came out in our initial discussions going back to the basics of the 3 R's: reduce, reuse, and recycle. And that's the framework that we're using for our work. So when we think about reduce, we're looking at bans. So in 2019, the state of Maryland banned expanded polystyrene, what we know as styrofoam. 2020, we almost banned plastic bags. We got it through the House. We unfortunately didn't get through the Senate. I have a couple of single-use plastic bans. We also need to really look at, and I'm teeing it up for you, Tommy, extended producer responsibility. That means we need to put it back on the producers of this plastic, because once they bear some of the burden, they will stop making as much as they do. So a couple of those examples could be with packaging. I'm going to have a bill on batteries, extended producer responsibility with batteries. I've got a container deposit law. Many of you may be aware of the 10 states where you can bring back your containers and get back the deposit. It's a really fantastic system. And the states that have that, their recycling rate, their return rate is much, much higher for those states that don't. Looking at reuse, we're looking at ways to incentivize a new market for recycled materials. Then recycle, we really have to fix put some investment into the infrastructure. I've been doing a lot of work with Adam and some of the other localities around the state, and there's a real need. The municipalities are struggling. So looking at how we at the state level can support them in some of the infrastructure, in maybe some regional solutions. And then also trying to standardize some of the issues around recycling. I'm sure Adam will talk to us about how many things have those chasing arrows that really aren't recyclable at all. And even across the state of Maryland, what you can recycle in Anne Arundel is not the same thing that you can recycle in Montgomery County. So taking a bird's eye view at the state and seeing what we can do to change things, to make our recycling effort stronger, but all the while knowing that we really can't recycle our way out of this. So I will stop there. I'm looking forward to everyone else's presentation and happy to answer any questions that anyone has. So thanks again for having me here.
Well, thank you, Delegate Sarah Love. We appreciate you being here. We appreciate your thoughts, and I'm sure we'll have further discussion later about what the state of Maryland is doing sort of more holistically. I am pleased to be able to introduce our next panelist, Adam Ortiz. He is the director of the Montgomery County Department of Environmental Protection, a $140 million agency with 300 employees and contractors. The department oversees programs for watershed restoration, greenhouse gas reduction, renewable energy, sustainability, and environmental compliance. And prior to joining Montgomery County, Adam served as the director of the Department of Environment for PG County from 2012 through 2018. Prior to that, as Deputy Chief of Staff for Lieutenant Governor Anthony Brown, Adam focused on workforce, higher education, and Veterans Affairs. And prior to that, he worked on workforce and immigration policy as Special Assistant to Secretary Tom Perez. From 2005 to 2011, Adam served 3 terms as Mayor of Edmonston, Maryland. And in this role, he was recognized as a champion of change by the White House and received a Bright Idea Award from Harvard's Kennedy School of Government for building the country's first complete green street. Adam has a BA in public policy from Goucher College in Townsend, Maryland, and we welcome tonight to this panel. Thank you.
Jeremy, thank you so much. Judy, thank you for bringing us together today. It's so good to see so many colleagues and friends. Pastor, thank you for that lovely prayer. We need some prayers, we need some action, and I want to thank everybody for tuning in tonight. It really says a lot that you're dedicating your precious time and resources and Tuesday evening to learning about what we can do together to address this the scourge of plastics. The movie was an eye-opener. Like many of you, have been involved in environmental work for some time, not just professionally, but as a kid, just like Sarah growing up. Always had a concern about recycling and doing the right thing environmentally, but still watching that movie, that film, and seeing just sort of the macro picture, just the systems issue, really was an eye-opener for me. And it was clear to me as part of the public sector, working for many of you for Montgomery County government, that so many of the costs of production are externalized onto the public. Whether it's litter, whether it's, items that we can't recycle, the manufacturers are no longer part of the equation once that item is put on a shelf. They're out of it. All of us are left to pay for cleaning it up. So there's been a lot of attention on the related issue of the recycling system. We oversee the recycling system in our department. And there's no question about it that we are underwater. We don't make money anymore on recycling. And per the film and per a recent article by Frontline and NPR, there is knowledge in the industry that folks never thought that recycling was going to be viable financially. I don't fully agree with that, but there's no question that it is distressed. And so the question is, okay, this is our reality. This is our world. What do we do about it? So, after 40 years of recycling systems and living in a world of plastic, we do have to up our game. We have to up our game in terms of recycling. We have to up our game in fighting to ensure that sustainable materials are hitting the shelves and hitting our earth and then going away within a reasonable amount of time. And we need to do this on a few different levels. We need to do it on a personal level. And that is being educated on issues as much as possible. Make sure that you are recycling right, but also that you're using your power as a consumer. You know, our dollars matter. There is power in our everyday decisions, no matter how small, because multiplied over a congregation, multiplied over a county or a state or a nation, we're talking of millions and millions of voices, millions and millions and millions of dollars. So little things like using reusable bottles and containers, all those things add up. Restaurants that you go to or grocery stores, you can talk to them about carrying sustainable materials or switching out unsustainable materials. And that's also talking to your neighbors and working with your listservs to educate people on doing all this stuff right. We're talking a lot about the local level. You know, Sarah is right. A lot of this stuff is falling on us to kind of figure out. And my friend and colleague, Tommy Wells, is going to talk about what they're doing in the district. But for us, we're trying to take some steps too. Today in Montgomery County Council, there was a public hearing on 2 bills addressing plastics. One is a ban on straws and also plastic straws, and also ways to make it easier to get nuisance or problem plastics out of our waste stream. Second bill, which isn't getting as much of attention, but I think really ties into the challenge that we're seeing from the film, is a ban on number 6 plastics. So those of you who aren't familiar, and no issue if you aren't, because I only learned about this myself recently, number 6 plastics are polystyrene. They're actually styrofoam that is not yet expanded. It has all the same problems that styrofoam has, it just looks better. So, you know, here's two cups. This one is a number 6. This one is a number 1. This number 6 is not recyclable and costs Montgomery County about $130 to dispose of. That's per ton to dispose of, so that's the taxpayers. This one, this number 1 plastic, actually earns us about $230 a ton when we sell this commodity. But unfortunately with this one, it looks just like this one. They get all mixed together, and then we go to try to sell this one. The price of our baled commodity is less. So who's paying for it? You're paying for it. I'm paying for it. All of us are. You know who's not paying for it? The producers. Their hands are clean. They aren't involved anymore. So we do have to work at the local level. We have to get these products out. And our ban on number 6 plastics, I think, is a step in the right direction to try to get those out and to continue to go through everything that is in our system, our consumer system, and get the stuff out that is not recyclable if there's a sustainable alternative. And then I know my time is about up, but I do want to touch on the national issue and the big issues. Recently, you know, we were trying to figure out, why do we have so much contamination in our recycling system? And at our recycling facility at Shady Grove, 40% of what we are getting in is actually not recyclable. And that is folks who are well-meaning, who are taking, you know, their items that look and sound and feel recyclable, and they're putting them in the bin. 40% we have to pull out and then send to the incinerator or to a landfill. That's a lot of work. And part of the problem is that this item and lots of items that are not recyclable still have the recycling symbol on the bottom. And I don't know if you can see it here in the dark. So we asked ourselves, why does this product, which is not recyclable, have the recycling symbol on it? And the short answer is that it's a basically unregulated part of our economy. And we talked to EPA. We had a 2-hour conference call with EPA to talk to them about it. Why are you guys letting this happen? They said, hey, you know, nothing we can do, blah, blah, blah. They said that it was a Federal Trade Commission issue. That's a conversation for another conference call, but there's the opportunity to petition the Federal Trade Commission to be able to have stronger regulations. So we need to work on all sorts of levels, because it's just not fair. Whether this item ends up in an incinerator, or ends up on the side of the road, or in our water, or in the bellies of wildlife, we have a responsibility to hold those responsible accountable, as well as doing everything that we can. So I'm happy to take any questions if there are any. It's an honor to be here with all of you, with my fellow panelists, as we figure this out together. Thank you so much.
So we have a poll for all our audience just now about disposable plastics and progress. What type of disposable plastic would you find easiest to stop using? We see the results coming in, so keep going. This is awesome. Do you see the results?
Yes, it looks like straws won, is that right?
Great. All right, we can move on.
Okay, it gives me great pleasure to introduce our next speaker, Director Tommy Wells. Tommy Wells is from the district, and I live in the district too. I go to church in Maryland, in Montgomery County, in Chevy Chase, but I live in the District of Columbia. So Tommy Wells' career in public service spans 36 years. And since 2015, he has served as the director of the District of Columbia Department of Energy and Environment. He is chiefly responsible for protecting the environment and conserving the natural resources of the District of Columbia. Most recently, he served as the DC Council member representing Ward 6, a position he held since 2006. During his time on the council, he worked to improve livability within the district so that drivers, cyclists, pedestrians, and exercise enthusiasts can coexist safely. He's known for his neighborhood-focused development and has championed efforts to ensure the availability of public transit, including the construction of new streetcar lines and the expansion of the DC circulator. As chair of the DC Council Committee on Transportation and the Environment, he worked to double the city's capital bike share program. In 2009, Tommy crafted the Anacostia River Cleanup and Protection Act of 2009 to implement a 5-cent fee on disposable bags. The legislation also established a fund to restore district water bodies, including the Anacostia River, and to support the distribution of reusable bags in the district, as well as to install trash traps and provide environmental education for district students. Tommy earned his law degree from the Columbus School of Law at Catholic University and a master's degree in social work from the University of Minnesota. So we're happy to have you on our panel, Mr. Wells.
But let me, again, Judy, thank you very much for the introduction and for helping host this. And thank you to our religious community for promoting the stewardship that's needed and required and expected for us to really respect the gifts and the planet that we have. And I'm honored to be part of this group. It's this is something that we all care about, you know, deeply, obviously related to the environment. And the movie is just one of those things that we look at and we know how bad it is, and then we're reminded how bad it is. And it's so graphically bad, and it certainly reminds us why we do this work. And you know, when I think about this and the problems that we're dealing with, I think that one of the things that we've learned in politics, as we see that there's a progressive movement out there, there's a liberal movement, but one of the main differences is that I think there's a real sense across the country, especially among young people, but also activists, all of us, is that we're really tired of incrementalism. That it's kind of like dating back to when someone would say, yeah, civil marriage is okay, but let's not do the regular marriage yet, or some other level that we should work our way up, not go too fast. And incrementalism is frustrating, and it's now become in some ways the enemy to what we have to do to mitigate the damage to the planet and to reverse course quickly. And I think that we have to kind of embrace that in order to make the kind of gains that we want to make. When I was on a council and I had visited, I'd taken a trip for pleasure to Switzerland and saw how clean their waterways were and how clean their public realm was. And I thought I need to do something back, you know, in the district in case I'm not reelected. I want to be able to say I did something for the environment. And I did kind of a scan of what's going on around the world and saw that that this wave was building to do something about disposable single-use plastic bags. And that we had really fought on the battlefield for years on more bottle bills. We had not been successful, but I saw that there was traction across the country and the world to do something about plastic bags. And so we did the research, came up with our bag bill, and I don't want to go too far into it, but I did involve the private corporations, Harris Teeter, Safeway. We really did a broad-based conversation about the role of the plastic bag as we went after it. And then we, partnered with groups, and I want to acknowledge Julie Lawson, who's one of our viewers this evening, from, now director of the Mayor's Clean Cities program. But this was one of her first entranceways of coming from surf riders to say, let's do something about this, which was different from other groups that still wanted to do kind of, the more incremental approach to get there. The idea was, let's just do this. And we met with everybody, we did it. But I bring that up to say that we're all on the same page here. We all want to do something about plastics. And there's no more convincing, but that wave is building again across the world. You see that, and I see that. That it's a wave that's building across the world to do something about plastics. The time is really becoming now to do it. And I do think we can go back to where Delegate Love started with the that matrix of reduce, reuse, and recycle is still relevant today. That recycling in many ways is harm mitigation. It's but somehow it's been turned into a value of its own. There's a bag bill, I don't know if it's in Texas, Arizona, New Mexico, that was defeated because it would undercut recycling if they reduced the number of bags, and people would lose some jobs. I mean, we really have to come back to a paradigm shift and really tap into the energy across the world that says that we are disgusted and appalled at what we've done with single-use plastics. And what is that new paradigm? I don't know if it's a, for plastic bottles, is it a new and improved deposit bill? Probably not. I think that the first cut is, again, where Delegate Love was on saying, how do we reduce? I mean, all of us, now that we're more aware of this, just become sickened and appalled by excess packaging. That something will come wrapped in plastic in a box, and then somehow, once again, taped with plastic or something. That we've all kind of become somewhat grossed out by the amount of packaging that we just find in our everyday life. And for me, it's kind of like when we started doing something about plastic bags, all of a sudden I realized I saw them everywhere. As soon as you become aware of the amount of plastics that are in the community, we all see it everywhere. Now, some of the strategies are direct action by government. The polystyrene ban is successful. The bag bill's been successful. We have a straw ban in DC. We're getting rid of, or we have you can't use plastic containers for takeout. It has to be compostable. We're moving in a direction on reduction, but that strategy is direct government intervention. And sometimes that's really hard to do. The other strategy about reusing, that's, certainly we're working against the tide that reusing is a value that we have the value, but it seems to be a minority choice of options, and we're going more towards recycling. So what's the new paradigm going to be? And I've written and come up with maybe 3 or 4 just different bottle bills. One was an impact fee. Another was some type of newfangled recycling. Trying to really work through this, and what are we going to do? I realize there's more than plastic single container disposable bottles, but that's the thing that sometimes gets our focus because we often see them in contrast to nature. We'll see a beautiful scene, and we certainly have that in Anacostia River, but after a rain like we've been having, we see a slew of just bottles floating down the river. So as we restore the river and restore our waterways, we're still seeing a lot of plastic, and that's often gets our focus. So I think that what we see going on is more and more about producer responsibility. We've got e-waste. We've got an e-waste bill in the district where those that sell electronics have to be part of figuring out how they're going to recollect them when people are done with them. We've got a paint bill that paint manufacturers have to participate in collecting used paint back in order to sell paint in the district. Those are specific interventions, but it's more in terms of a concept of intervention, which is those that profit and produce this should be part of the solution greater than just paying their taxes and expecting us to clean it up. So Coca-Cola has in their mission statement, many of you have now seen that they want to have they want to recycle 100% of the number of bottles that they sell by 2030. So they're not saying it has to be their bottles, but they want to recycle 100%. And the reason they don't want to stop selling plastic bottles is because they say our customers want them. The demand is still there, and we're here to meet demand. And so we're not going to stop selling plastic bottles. But we will, recognizing that consumers of the future, that there's starting to be a backlash. Their concession is saying, but no, we're going to figure out how to recycle 100% of the bottles that we sell by 2030. Now, Pepsi and Nestle and others, major corporations that profit off selling single-use plastic bottles, have similar statements in their mission statements. I believe that what we're going to have to do at some point is probably codify that into law. It's your mission. We expect, you're a successful company. All right, let's require you to do it. And also let's require the other folks that profit off single-use containers. Now, how we scale that up to other plastic packaging is going to be a challenge, because that you can almost fall under the weight of trying to do everything at once. And I know that I came out against incrementalism, but the responsibility in particular that on the environment that we see, right now we have a study on microplastics, and many of you have been aware of that or involved in that. We're looking at that in Chesapeake Bay and our waterways of what's the impact of all the microplastics that we're dealing with. So we have to address this somehow. The last thing I'll say is that we're watching in the news right now that there's been class actions and lawsuits from states and others against oil producers, Mobil Exelon. And they're claiming that they knew the damage that they were doing as they were misleading the public to do it. That is another way, certainly the route of what we did with tobacco. And I know that the district just did a products liability action with Monsanto and got over $53 million for the PCBs that they produced. They were the only producer. They couldn't point a finger to someone else. We can point a finger to the damage that it's done to our environment and the cancers that it's caused. And so they have had to pony up. That may end up with the producers. That may be something that in the future may happen for the producers of plastics. More and more as they see the degradation of our communities, our natural resources, and as we show that there's some impact on the health of people, that there may be a responsibility that gets tested in law. And so I don't believe that it has to be adversarial. I believe that if the people that profit, the corporations that profit off single-use plastics and this packaging will work with us now to come up with a plan for either, meeting our matrix, reduce, reuse, and recycle, to where we get to where 100%, as Coca-Cola pledges, is accounted for by those that sell it and profit from it. Then we're going to make a difference. But it has to be big, it has to be comprehensive, and it has to really include all of our regions. And it's great that the district is here with Montgomery County and Maryland, and we can do this together. And I think now's the time. The wave is cresting.
So we had just one more question on the polls, and we'll do it real quick in 30 seconds. reducing plastic waste is everyone's responsibility, the plastic producer's responsibility, or the product producer's responsibility? Oh, lots of responses coming in. All right, we can see our poll results. Do you see them? 74% people think it's everyone's responsibility, 17% the plastic producer's responsibility, and 9% the product producer's responsibility. Thank you.
Of course, everyone's responsibility.
Thanks, everyone.
Great. Well, our next panelist tonight is Amy Marin. Amy Marin has been the Zero Waste Lead for the Montgomery County Sierra Club since December of 2018. As a New Jersey native, Amy has been a Bethesda resident since 1998. She had a 20-year career in public policy in Washington before working as a volunteer with Montgomery County Public Schools, the Literacy Council, and Washington English Center. Her career positions included Washington, D.C. representative for the Sierra Club, environmental legislative assistant and special projects director for U.S. Senator Frank Lautenberg from New Jersey, program evaluator with the U.S. Government Accountability Office, and a policy consultant for several national environmental organizations. She holds a master's in public policy from Georgetown University, specializing in environment and energy policy. Welcome, Amy.
Thanks, Jeremy. And it's really nice to see this great panel and to be with you. And Reverend Reynolds, I really appreciated your prayer very much. Thank you. I'm going to share my screen. So waking up to our plastic and packaging nightmare. This is just a photo I took outside my local 7-Eleven. A tremendous amount of plastic waste, including straws, number 6 plastic cups, some recyclable cups, and plastic bags. Pretty much sums up the problem right there in one photo. It's quite alarming. This is another photo I took of our local Giant in Bethesda. By now, anybody who goes into a grocery store or has tried to order food from a restaurant understands the explosion of single-use plastic waste. These bagels are there's one in each container of single-use non-recyclable number 6 plastic, not to mention the price tag, which you would need to peel off if you wanted to be a good recycler. And I know all of you have seen the photos of hungry people lined up at our food distribution centers. The food is often placed in plastic single-use bags. Those are very cheap. They're much cheaper to buy than paper bags. And right now, I can't blame these distribution centers, these food banks, for using these bags because they're struggling. Everyone is struggling right now. But the bags are made from fossil fuels and synthetic chemicals. Now the virus will go away eventually within the next year or so, but what I worry about is that we've become so comfortable with this plastic, single-use plastic lifestyle almost. And it's almost like we have a marriage of convenience with the big plastic. And we have to do something about it. I want to show you kind of a big picture of Montgomery County's waste stream. Thank you, Adam, and your staff for giving me the data so that I can really take a look at what kinds of waste we're dealing with. I'm going to make that a little bit bigger. This is based on waste audits that are done every few years, paid for by our tax dollars. And this is the most recent one. It's a little bit old, but I think it's still tells a good story. The largest components of our waste stream are paper, about 22%, food, 20%, other organics, which are like clothing and diapers and textiles, and then plastic is the gold yellowish slice of pie, and that's about 16% of our waste. So let's look more closely at the plastic waste that we do have in our waste stream in Montgomery County. So by tonnage, the largest categories are film plastic, 51,679 tons annually are generated. And that's not even counting the shopping bags. That's packaging. That's Ziploc bags. Think about plastic bags you might get from Amazon that are recyclable, but people throw them away. Cracker bags, cereal bags, anything that you get in the mail. A lot of this stuff can be recycled, but a lot of people just simply don't know about it. Newspaper bags, pet waste bags are in there too. The next category, narrow neck plastics. Now those are easily recyclable, but why are there still 23,000 tons of that waste in our waste system? Other rigid plastics, plastic tubs and lids, and shopping bags, which we know we can either refuse or simply recycle them at our local grocery stores, where they're turned into decking by a company called Trex. They're sent to Winchester, Virginia. They love the stuff. They pay for it. They pay the grocery stores to put it into giant bales, and they take it away and make it into park benches, playground equipment, and other things. Now, just to give some perspective, I did some math, and when I look at all of the plastic waste generated in our county, that's single family, multifamily, and non-residential. Non-residential is not just businesses, restaurants, but our institutions. We have federal facilities, we have county, state, local. It's about 20 tons of plastic film of waste per year, per person per year. And this is a 20-ton truck, just to give you some perspective. As you saw in the film, why should we care about plastic waste? This is a photo I took of our MRF, our materials recycling facility in Montgomery County, in Shady Grove, Durwood, Maryland. This is what it gets dumped off of out of the recycling bins. So much of this stuff cannot be recycled, as Adam has told you. We have mostly women who work on these lines sorting this stuff out, and they literally have to pull it out with their hands when it comes down the ramp. And if you haven't toured our recycling center, when it does open up, hopefully in the next few months, you have got to go and see that for yourself. It is a sight to see. I don't know if Adam probably needs to put more emphasis on this when he talks to groups, is that only a really tiny percentage of all plastics are actually recycled. And we're talking mostly about plastic bottles. And it may seem like we're doing a great job around here because this is just our little piece of the United States. But I mean, I just came back from New Jersey, and the shelves are filled with styrofoam and single-use plastic number 6 cups. They're everywhere. And I thought New Jersey was progressive, but we're way ahead of them. Now I want to show you another photo, piece of data that I developed from this Montgomery County data, which is the total tons of waste generated and recycled in Montgomery County in 2017. We're doing a pretty good job with paper. We're doing a pretty good job, really great job with yard waste. We have a very good facility up in Dickerson. I can't say the same with food waste, but I think Adam and his staff are working very hard on that issue. And hopefully in the next few years, we'll have some food waste collection. But if you look at the plastics, the green bars, the fifth green bar, you don't see an orange bar. You don't see big orange bars next to those plastic green bars, because it is just, we have such a low rate in our county. And I'm not blaming anybody in particular, but I am blaming the industry for continuing to sell this stuff and market this stuff, and that there's simply not enough knowledge on the part of consumers. And we all have to do a better job with regard to that. There's one little other area of plastic waste that I just wanted to mention very quickly, which is artificial turf, which I say is designed for the dump, like so many other pieces of plastic. It's covering our playing fields, and I know in DC, it is also prevalent. It's not recyclable, and it is the focus of Sierra Club efforts at the county and state level. It's cheap to produce and maintain, and it's the problem is when it starts to break down, it just becomes another piece of microplastic. It gets into our waterways, and the glue itself that's used to attach it has a tremendous amount of chemicals in it. When it rains, the stuff washes down, and the stuff is also flammable. And it lasts about 8 to 10 years. And what happens to it is it either gets landfilled or incinerated. And I just wanted to talk briefly some of the legislation that Adam and Sarah have mentioned. We are working very hard on as well. At the state level, we would like to see that ban on plastic shopping bags enacted. And if they can't do it, then I hope Montgomery County will do it first. Because 60% of our shoppers are using either reusable bags or no bags at all. And there's so many stores now, these European chains, Aldi and Lidl, that are coming in, do not provide any bags to people. And that is the wave of the future. We support the extending the phone food ban to include number 6 plastics, as Adam mentioned. We'd actually like to see that actually extended to products that come in from out of the county, such as meat, poultry, seafood, and egg cartons. As Adam mentioned, we support the straws on request only. And we also want to see condiments on request only, and utensils. I want to give a shout out to Delegate Love for her efforts on the bottle bill. And I can't wait to work with her on the next iteration of it. And on the federal level, I want to mention the Break Free from Plastic Pollution Act, which has quite a number of provisions to it, but it's essentially saying to industry that you have to take a greater role. It's about beverage bottle takebacks. It's about putting a pause on new plastic production facilities and a nationwide carry-out bag fee. Also, minimum recycled content in containers. That is HB 209. I'm sorry, that's HR 5845 or S 3263. And I want to thank Delegate Norton and the congressmen from Maryland who have sponsored the bill. Our Montgomery County Congressman Raskin, Sarbanes and Trone, as well as Ruppersberger. who have co-sponsored the bill. However, our 2 senators have not supported the bill yet, and we'd like to see them jump on. So I wanted just to mention a few things I know everyone here is aware of, but you can refuse to buy things in plastic. You can, if you're going to place an order, try to find out what it is packaged in. I know that's difficult to do. Write to the companies and say it's not acceptable that their products are put in plastic, put it on social media, tweet out the name of the company in your tweet, telling them that they need to do a better job. Try to buy things in bulk and bring your own bags, of course. And refusing single-use plastic items is something that is so easy to do. I also want to mention that we hope that businesses such as Green to Go can take a foothold here in the near future. They're very popular in California, and there's one in Durham, North Carolina. That is a company that is a small business that allows you to keep your own carryout container at the restaurant. They will clean it for you when you're finished. You can order food from them, and you don't have to feel bad about it because you're ordering something in a plastic container. They'll keep your container, and every time you bring it back, they'll wash it. If they have the facility. And we'd like to see grants given out to restaurants to help them purchase the kind of washing machines, dishwashers they can sterilize and keep those containers clean for you to use over and over again. And I think that's about it. If you have any questions, there's my contact information, and you can also check out my the Zero Waste website on our Sierra Club Montgomery County webpage. Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. That was a lot. You gave us a lot of good suggestions and ways that we can be involved. I want to introduce Jean Braha at this point. I'm happy to introduce Jeannie because she is the executive director of Rock Creek Conservancy, and I live right by Rock Creek Park and really enjoy walking in the park every day. She has more than a decade of experience in high-level environmental fundraising and a deep knowledge of the DC area nonprofit arena, as well as a commitment to equitably connecting people to stewardship opportunities. Before her work with the Conservancy, she served as Director of Foundation Relations at the Student Conservation Association. She worked as the Project Director of Foundation Relations. She worked as a Project Director of Public Engagement at the American Association for the Advancement of Science, and was also the Bridging Watershed Program Director at the Alice Ferguson Foundation. Jeannie holds a master's degree of environmental management from Yale University and a Bachelor of Arts in anthropology with a concentration in environmental studies from Bryn Mawr College. She also has a nonprofit management executive certificate from Georgetown University. So Jeannie, tell us about the park.
All right. Thank you, Judy. As you can see from my picture, I welcome any opportunity to talk about Rock Creek, and always happy to be in the company of those who love it. And today was a really wonderful day to be out there in the park if you had a chance. So Rock Creek Conservancy, in addition to being the Friends Group to Rock Creek Park, the national park in Washington, D.C., is a watershed organization, and we work to protect the entire almost 80 square miles of watershed, which about 80% of that is in Montgomery County. So I'm really delighted to have both Adam and Tommy here, because we cannot protect Rock Creek without having both jurisdictions engaged. And the Conservancy really strives to help convene them. So I've done my job for today, even though I had nothing to do with getting the two of you here, in terms of getting them and their staffs and the other agencies that are involved thinking about the ways that we can solve these problems, because The water doesn't know, the plastic doesn't know when it reaches that boundary between Montgomery County and the district. So in order to solve these problems, we really need to think comprehensively about that. I will admit, I really enjoyed the film, but as I was watching it, I was thinking, oh my God, why have I been invited to speak on this panel? What do I have to offer here? In terms of the work that the Conservancy does, we do, I think, really important and critical work restoring Rock Creek, particularly restoring forest health, and that those thousands of acres of forest in Rock Creek are one of our biggest buffers for climate resilience in this region, which is important as our use of plastics increases. But as I was thinking about this sort of systemic change that the film was really alluding to, which is so critical, certainly we support things like the bag ban in the district, the straw ban that was in front of the council today. But in terms of our day-to-day work, what we really do is put people to work in the park and get people excited about Rock Creek itself. But I think that's really key. So this idea of people-powered restoration, since we were founded in 2005, the Conservancy has brought more than 40,000 people in both Montgomery County and Washington, D.C. out into Rock Creek, whether it's the national park or Montgomery Parklands, to volunteer. And we do a lot of cleanups. I brought those pictures today because those are certainly some of the most directly connected to plastic. It's the wrong end of the line for plastic as far as the film is concerned and the conversations and the real big picture change. But we're not going to see that change unless we have a constituency that's really excited about that. And certainly if you're a member of the Sierra Club, if that's what brought you here today, you're already on board with these changes that will lead to producer responsibility and some of the really important legislation that we've heard about. And certainly those of you that are members of the churches that share those values around creation care have that commitment. But what we found at the Conservancy is one thing that really brings people together is Rock Creek. It's, it is a value that we all share. And I think over the last 6 months, more and more people have become like Judy and have been spending a lot of time in the parklands that we're so fortunate to have near us. And what we try to do at the Conservancy is really use those opportunities to get people out to serve and use that not as an end point in their work as stewards of Rock Creek and of our greater environment, but to use that as a starting point. So you come out, you realize that what you're doing has an impact on Rock Creek, and then take that even further. I do want to let everyone know that there is no need to stop being a good steward of Rock Creek or anywhere else for that matter during this pandemic. We have had hundreds of people do what we call individual cleanups as we're not able to bring people together in large scale events. In fact, plogging, which is the act of going for a run and stopping periodically to pick up trash. It's a Swedish term, plogging. I'm told it's very good for the glutes. So if you're looking for some cross-training opportunities in Rock Creek, I strongly recommend that. But I encourage you all, there's no need to stop being a steward just because we have this pandemic. Just grab a bag and take it whenever you go, and really open your eyes and see what you see. You might not see a turtle with a straw in its nose, but as we start getting used to the real beauty and the magic that is Rock Creek, there's no desire for any disruption there. So since I am the person between you and the questions, I'm going to close my comments there, and thank you very much, Judy, and the rest of the team that brought me to this panel, and look forward to working with all of you to make big changes for Rock Creek.
Well, thank you. And thanks to all of our panelists for this great information, and hopefully we can answer some of the many questions that have come in. It seems like there is a common trend with regard to the labeling of plastics, the numbering of plastics. So let me just first ask. So Adam, you briefly noted this Frontline and NPR article that came out last week revealing how the plastics industry is working to put the recycle symbol on all forms of plastic to give the impression that all forms of plastic are actually recyclable. It seems clear now based on this discussion and the movie that that's not the case. And it actually results in more aspirational recycling, which is more contamination, less recycling, and a drive for more consumption because we assume everything's going to be recycled. What effect would it have to focus only on recycling the number 1 or number 2 plastics and call all the rest non-recyclable? take the recycle symbol and put an X through it, for instance, or prohibit through these various bills that have been introduced any plastic that isn't recyclable. Open that up to the panel.
I'll take a first swing at that, since I think I'm probably guilty of helping prompt that line of questioning for my comments. That's exactly the evolution of where our debate needs to go, precisely. And I actually pulled up our commodity prices from 2 months ago, and I'll just share them with you. Number one, plastics, we're selling at $229 a ton. So that's good. Number two, plastics that are clear, about $1,153 a ton. Very valuable. Number twos that are colored, $268 a ton. Very good. And number fives are $145 a ton. The remaining ones, threes, fours, sixes, and sevens, we could not get a buyer for any of them. So 3, 4s, 6s, and 7s are the ones that we don't want in our waste stream if there's an alternative. I will say we've been focused on plastics, but a consumer choice that does make a big difference is aluminum. So if you have a choice between drinking your IPA out of a 6-pack that's aluminum cans or bottles or glass bottles, you definitely want to choose aluminum. Same with soft drinks or anything else. So that is absolutely the way to go. And Jeremy, I think there was a second part of the question that I'm forgetting.
I think the second part of the question was whether or not there could be any movement towards, I guess, educating and then changing the labels so that really there isn't a recycle symbol on, 3, 4, 6. It's not confusing to folks what is and what is not recyclable or recycled.
Yeah, great. So I mentioned that the FTC oversees that labeling issue because it's considered a consumer regulatory item. So that's where we need to petition. But there is a coalition of manufacturers that have launched, and people can look it up, how to recycle system. So it's how, the number 2, recycle. If you just punch that in one word, you'll see that a coalition of companies have come together, which is a more accurate recycling system. So I have actually a sample here, and you can't see my office, but it is literally littered with about 3 dozen different types of disposable items. But this one I'll share with you. I don't know if you can see that. So this is their take on how to do this right. So you see the recycling symbol with the slash through it. So that means not recyclable. And then it says underneath, what the item is, plastic pouch. So this is plastic film. Plastic film is not recyclable except in very boutique applications. So there's 2 ways to go to do this right. One is to get the Federal Trade Commission to have truth in recycling. The other one is this private industry movement called How to Recycle. But that's exactly where we need to go to as a movement.
Does anyone else on the panel wish to ask?
Well, I'd just like to add that if you haven't seen Adam's instructional videos on what's recycled or not, then you have not availed yourself of some of the most clear instructions you could get. I think that we're trying to get him to do it for the district because the rules change in different ways, but he's very clear and concise, and I think a public service.
Thanks, Tommy.
I mean, you raised a good point there that the rules are different. DC will recycle different things than PG County or Montgomery County or Virginia. And so how is anyone supposed to know what to do if they are crossing state lines here in this, tri-state area? It seems like consumer education is going to always be difficult and will never really reach everyone that's needed to make the recycling system work and reduce the contamination that way. So do you see other ways further upstream to sort of take it out of the consumer's hands, take it out of the end user's hands to have that knowledge?
I definitely believe that the most effective means generally has been direct regulation by the government. The CAFE standards the amount of reductions that we've made in, you know, smog, greenhouse gases, and others have been direct intervention of regulation. The progress we're making on our waterways is directly from the Clean Waters Act. It's not from markets or just public opinion. It's requirement of government regulation. I think that the way to go is going to have to be a direct intervention from the government.
And just to pick up, oh, go ahead.
Go ahead,
Amy.
Sarah.
I was just going to say, just to pick up on the poll question. I mean, we are still going to have to have consumer education, but you know, it really is everyone's responsibility. So the more that we can put on producers to take some responsibility for their packaging, the more they're actually going to try to create packaging that is recyclable. You know, as we saw in the movie, you know, this plastic is not recyclable. This plastic has got ink on it, so that's not recyclable. So we've got to put some of the pressure back on to the producers, as well as continue that education. And I think one of the things that people don't realize is that when you put something that is non-recyclable in the recycling bin, you actually cost money. I mean, Adam mentioned that before, but it's really surprising because myself, I think, oh, well, if it's questionable, throw it in the recycling bin. But I'm actually doing more harm that way than just saying, okay, if it's a question, throw it out.
And I love Tommy's point about it is the federal government's responsibility to regulate businesses and to regulate anything that crosses every state's boundary, which is a product. The same way they've regulated seatbelts and mandated universal types of seatbelts, airplanes. Would you want to have a different standard for every airplane you get into, or a different type of brakes for every different car you get into? I don't think it's any different because plastics are something that we pay for, and we have to pay for the disposal of. So we really need some progressive leadership in Congress on this issue. And the Udall-Lowenthal bill goes a long way. But labeling isn't part of it, and I'd love to see someone else take up that mantle.
Great, thank you. So there have been a couple of questions about the human health impacts of plastic, further upstream or at the end of life or as it's recycled. The video showed an incinerator in India. It showed some just individuals melting down plastic into the long extruded strands, and then the nurdles, I guess they're called. Can anyone on this panel speak to sort of the human health effects of either the production or the recycling facility itself, or ingestion of those tiny particles that are found in the sea, the nurdles or the microplastics? And I recognize we have more attorneys on the phone than we do scientists, but okay, well, we can always.
Actually, Jeremy, I'd like to phone a friend if we don't mind. Ernest at the Lifeline. I know Julie Lawson is somewhere on this call, I believe, and she's quite the expert on microplastics.
Mm-hmm.
Regis, is that okay?
Oh, we can certainly, she can unmute herself, I believe.
What was her name again?
Julie Lawson, Lawson. Sorry, Julie.
Julie is saying that she can't unmute herself.
Right.
Julie,
I just unmuted. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thanks, Adam. I promise to heckle you. So can you repeat the question, please?
I guess the question is the human health impacts of either the recycling process or the incineration process, or what's remaining in the environment as microplastics? If I'm not sure which of those was your expertise.
Yeah, so in 2015, I ran a survey of the Chesapeake Bay on microplastic pollution and to understand what the concentration of microplastics was in the bay. We don't yet have data on the human health impact, but we are now working on the fisheries impacts. We know that certain fish ingest the plastics. We know that they bioaccumulate. We also know that plastics absorb chemicals from the water, specifically hydrophobic chemicals, other things made of petrochemicals, like fertilizers, pesticides, and flame retardants, and that they are both absorbed into the plastics and also form a barrier around the plastics. And when some fish and other aquatic life consume them, that can bioaccumulate in their fatty tissues. There is a new group within the Chesapeake Bay program, the Plastic Pollution Action Team, that is working on an environmental risk assessment related to identify what the microplastic pollution on striped bass is. And they're focusing on striped bass from 0 to 3 years. That committee is chaired by a valued member of the DOEE team, Matt Robinson, and I'm participating on it. And we're trying to understand what their ingestion and the chemical contamination is on those fisheries. We also have research out of University of Maryland Eastern Shore showing changes to oyster development when they ingest microplastics as filter feeders. They suck it all in and they don't always push it all back out. And what does that do to their development? It does hinder both their development and their reproductive ability. So we're looking at significant issues to our aquatic habitat. Finally, the microplastics are forming films on our underwater vegetation in rivers and the bay. And what does that mean when we have juvenile fisheries, fish, crabs, oysters hanging out in those areas and being exposed to toxics that have been absorbed by those plastics? So we don't yet have any data on human health impact, but we are at the fish level. And maybe in a decade, we'll have the human level.
I will take advantage of the phone a friend opportunity as well. And just note that my brother, who is a doctor, texted in the Q&A box, thank you for participating, Tim, that colon cancer is on the rise at an earlier age. One of the leading theories as to why we're seeing it is due to microplastics, particularly as we are detecting these microplastics in the GI tract. So it sounds like it's being detected in human bodies and it may have an effect, such as colon.
To that point, this is Julie again. We do know that we see girls starting puberty earlier, and that is proven to be connected to the increase in exposure to phthalates, which are a plasticizer that specifically make things like shower curtains flexible and other tubing. And so we do know that the chemicals that make plastic the different features that it has are affecting our human health. So girls are reaching puberty earlier due to exposure to those chemicals.
Thank you. Thank you for being a guest participant here tonight and taking the floor. Wanted to go up a couple of levels here with the story of plastic. You know, it was especially compelling by reframing the issue not just as a waste problem, but as the whole chain of upstream events, such as extraction and transport and refining. And it also shows that the issue lies at various scales, you know, global, national, state, and local. How does Maryland fit into this picture? And maybe Sarah, can you discuss which of these upstream activities are occurring in Maryland and what the state, either the legislative branch or the executive branch, is doing about these upstream impacts?
Sure. So the state is, we're doing a lot sort of across the whole gamut. I mentioned a couple of the bills dealing with, banning the plastics and EPR. We banned fracking years ago. So that's one thing that we've done up front. And know that Sierra Club and some of the other environmental organizations were very helpful in helping us legislators push back on the Hogan administration when they were trying to allow part of a pipeline under the Potomac. It would have been, I think, a very small piece of Maryland, but we did not want it. And so we were able to gather a lot of public pressure saying, look, we banned fracking. Governor Hogan, you signed that bill. Why would we now allow fracked gas to be piped through Maryland? So we've done some of that. I'm trying to think if there's anything else more upstream that we've done, and nothing really comes to mind on that one. I don't know that we have any of the big producers here. Somebody can correct me if I'm wrong. I know we have some bottling plants, but I think that's about it. Yeah. But I do know that, we are really trying to take a holistic view of this and of the environmental impact. And I saw in the chat, someone mentioned environmental justice. And that's something else that we really think about when we look at environmental problems. I mean, the first thing that comes to mind is the Baltimore incinerator and the problems that that causes. And I'm also looking into other issues that have to do with transportation and environmental justice. And one of the things that we've seen with COVID is that communities of color and low-income communities are having harder or worse outcomes with COVID. And so much of it is because, the sin turf is dumped in their neighborhood. The incinerator is in their neighborhood. All of these things are causing health problems that COVID then exacerbates. So as a legislature, we're also very much attuned to those issues and trying to make sure that we aren't making things worse that way.
That raises a good point, actually, that I had for both Adam and Tommy about where our trash goes. Like I said earlier, it seems like it varies by jurisdiction. What happens to our trash? What happens to the plastic that isn't recyclable? Does it go into a landfill? Is it incinerated? If I have a question about whether or not I should even bother to recycle plastic, which is where I was left with at the end of the film. So it's good to see that there is a market for certain plastics in Montgomery County. But sometimes I just feel like maybe I should just throw it away. And is that the right thing to do? Is it going to Asia like the movie shows? Is it going to impoverished communities to pick and sort? Or is it handled differently in our county and in Washington, D.C.?
Well, and in a lot of our trash, first off, we have single stream recycling. And so that's where it gets sorted. And then we also have a good portion of our trash is once again, Julie would know the exact numbers of this, but the majority of our trash is hauled by private haulers. And a lot of that goes to landfill. A lot of that also goes to the trash to energy plant, whatever we want to call those, where that gets burned in, I think out in Arlington. And so it goes to different places. Now, in the district, there's not the option of landfilling in the district. And we're having, as you can imagine, difficulty in finding places where we can compost. A lot of people don't want to live around a compost site. And when land is at such a premium in the district, turning it over to composting sites turned to be difficult. But we're generating a partnership with Prince George's County with the compost site that Adam created when he was there. So our trash goes into different places, and from being burned for waste energy to landfill to some composting, not enough, to recycling. And that's what happens to it.
In Montgomery, if there are any Prince Georges, I could talk about Prince George's too. In Montgomery, in terms of the recycling stream, I'm really happy to say that all the commodities that we can sell, so aluminum, number one, number two, plastics, those are all being purchased by processors that are within 150 miles or less of Montgomery County. So, so it is staying in the region, and it's being recycled into other materials. Nothing that we recycle goes overseas. And in fact, I'm told that there's no record of that happening, at least on the East Coast. Maybe it's different on the West Coast because they're on the Pacific Ocean. And I also noticed the movie did focus on the West Coast in some of the articles. So things may be a little bit different over here. In terms of the trash stream, our residential collections go to the waste to energy facility incinerator in the northwest part of the county. And commercial, some of it can go there, but commercial can go anywhere. So often it goes to transfer stations and landfills or other incinerators in other places. In terms of what's the best disposition for plastic, which I think is what you're suggesting, Jeremy, for non-recyclable plastic, I'm not sure there's a good answer to that. You know, the incinerators, of course, burn it. Our incinerators in the United States are more highly regulated, especially newer ones than India and other places. So it's better, but it's not good. There's, you know, certainly emissions and toxins that are in the air from the incinerator. That's not great. Landfills aren't great either. And there's a lot of literature that just different impacts. Incidentally, landfills are lined on the bottom and on the top with membranes that are supposed to capture everything, all the hazardous material, all the methane, all of that. But what we've learned after 30 or 40 years of that technology is that the membranes are made out of plastic. And what do we know about plastic? Plastic breaks down. So we've learned in the last 5 years that the methane caps on landfills are fissuring and breaking, and that there's twice as many methane emissions coming out of landfills than we had previously thought. And likewise, there's more groundwater contamination because the liners are breaking down and stuff is getting in. So there's no good answer except to use less stuff. But I wish I had better news, Jeremy.
Thank you.
I just wanted to mention that, Adam, that was a great explanation. And the reason why we need a zero waste mindset is because of those two options are just simply unacceptable. We just can't keep throwing everything either in an incinerator or in a landfill, and we need to focus on waste reduction. Let's stop producing it. Let's get food waste out. And a huge portion of our waste is food, and if it sits in a landfill, it creates methane gas, which is the most potent greenhouse gas. Thanks.
Well, recognizing the time that it is 9:04, I'm just going to ask one last question. Sorry, we're not able to get to everyone's questions here tonight, but hopefully this can be answered quickly and succinctly from our panelists, and this goes to everyone. Based on your experience and knowledge of these issues, can you quickly name the most effective thing we can do to address the problem of plastic pollution in any of its forms? And in thinking of an answer, consider whether the attendees of this call, either as a congregation or as a network of religious institutions, can bring something unique to the dialogue.
I'll be really short and sweet. I would encourage everyone to vote. You know, I think what we've seen tonight is that the people that we vote for make important choices that reflect our values or don't. So making that choice, getting your request for an absentee ballot in ASAP would be great. And telling a friend to do that too.
Well, that's great, Jeannie. And I will just say, as the elected official here, I won by 12 votes. So every vote really, really matters. My answer would be to reduce your own footprint of plastic. Amy put up a number of things that you could do, and Amy, I'm sorry if I'm stealing your answer, but we can make a difference. And if we talk to our friends and our family and explain to them why we're doing this, then we certainly can make a big difference. Oh, and lobby on my bills.
And I would simply say, educate your friends, family, neighbors. I don't think they're ever too, it's never too late to try, especially folks who, keep doing the same things over and over again. Mindfulness about what you purchase is really the answer for individuals. Thanks.
I'll go next. Amy, I couldn't agree more. Conscious consumption, to the prayer that the pastor made, like everything that we do, how we do it matters to the planet. And when you do something right, tell your friends, tell your family.
Well, I strongly agree with political choices and pressure that when I talk about a wave building, that politicians often will see that and they either have to get out of the way or they have to ride that crust as well. And so the movement against plastic is building. And I think that we look for, I do think, political choices. And I'll also share, I know that during COVID, a lot of us are a lot more mindful in some ways, at least I know I have been. And we're sourcing as much of our food in my household from local sources. I know many of you think about that. We're using a company right now called 4P Foods, but they work on providing a food distribution chain for local farms from Maryland, Pennsylvania, Virginia, and around. And the reduction in packaging for us in our household is extraordinary. So there's a premium. It's not cheap to do that, but it is a matter of choice. And frankly, it does make a difference. I mean, it means that at least you can feel like you're not part of supporting something as destructive as our industrial food system.
Thank you, everyone. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Judy for some last words.
Well, again, I would just like to thank all of our panelists for being with us tonight and offering your words of wisdom and encouragement, because in many ways the movie was discouraging, but there are things we can do. And I think that we need to make up our minds, each one of us, all of us participants here, that we're going to do at least one thing, do as many as we can, but at least one thing that came up tonight. And again, let me thank our co-sponsors and all of you for tuning in tonight and taking your time and your energy to make our world a nicer place to live and a more healthy place for all to live in. Good night.
Thank you.